The acrid smell of burnt plastic filled my nostrils again, a scent I now knew preceded betrayal. My laptop screen was black. Chloe stood there, a faint smirk playing on her lips, the same one she'd worn right before pushing me down the stairs in my last life. Oops, she'd said then. Oops, she said now, feigning shock as I stared at the dead machine. My entire influencer portfolio, Ilara Glows, gone. Again. But this time, the panic that had once consumed me, making me wail and crumble, was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She didn't know I remembered everything. She didn't know this time. I was ready. The game had already begun, and she was 3 years and 1 lifetime behind. I forced the image of my previous life's demise, the fall, the splintering pain that had shot up my leg, the encroaching darkness from my mind. I focused on the present, identical betrayal. Chloe's feigned concern was a masterpiece of insincerity, honed over years of practice. Oh, Ilara, I'm so sorry. I just tripped with my water bottle and it went everywhere. Her eyes, however, those familiar hazel pools, glinted with a triumph she barely bothered to conceal. It was a look I'd seen countless times before, usually just before the floor fell out from under me. This time, I cataloged it, filed it away in the cold, clear archive of my reborn memory. My meticulously built Ilara Glow's Instagram, with its carefully curated aesthetic and hard-won followers, my budding YouTube channel where I'd just started to find my voice, my network of affiliate links that brought in a trickle of precious income, all wiped out. The laptop, holding unsaved work, unique access keys to secure accounts, and the only copies of several upcoming sponsored posts, was fried. The air thickened with the lingering metallic tang of burnt circuits, a smell that now made my stomach clench with remembered dread. And Chloe's cloyingly sweet perfume, a gardenia monstrosity she doused herself in. The combination was nauseating. Our mother, when she arrived, drawn by Chloe's performative yelp, surveyed the scene with a sigh that already placed the blame squarely on my shoulders. Ilara, you know how clumsy Chloe can be. You really should be more careful with your expensive things. Her voice, usually soft, held that familiar edge of disappointment reserved just for me. The familiar sting of injustice, of being unseen and unheard, pricked at me, a phantom pain from 1,000 similar moments. In my past life, I would have wept, argued, pleaded for them to see the truth. Now, I simply nodded, a mask of numb despair sliding easily into place. It was a role I knew well. You're right, Mom. It was careless of me. I let them see only defeat, only the broken girl they expected. Later, hidden in the quiet of my small bedroom, the door locked against further intrusion, I allowed the cold fury to surface. It wasn't the hot, consuming rage of my past life. This was different, sharper, more focused. Chloe's motive was pathetically clear: the upcoming Radiant Beauty campaign, a lucrative brand deal we were both somehow finalists for. She'd simply and effectively eliminated her competition. I heard her on the phone through the thin wall, her voice dripping with false sympathy as she recounted the accident to her best friend, Maya. Poor Ilara, she's devastated, just staring at it. Guess that Radiant Beauty spot is all mine now, huh? A cruel, triumphant giggle followed. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. They thought I was broken. They thought I'd start again from scratch, predictable and slow, just like last time. They had no idea I wouldn't be rebuilding Ilara Glows. I'd be birthing something far more potent, something they'd never see coming, something that would grow in the shadows they never bothered to look into. The first tendrils of a new plan, audacious and thrilling, began to uncurl in the fertile ground of my reborn mind. What if I didn't need to recover the old? What if I could build something entirely new, something invulnerable to their petty jealousies? The next day, while Chloe paraded her faux sympathy around the house, offering me stale platitudes and helpful suggestions about data recovery services she knew I couldn't afford, I retreated. The scent of lavender from my cheap diffuser, a deliberate choice to calm my racing thoughts and steady my resolve, filled my small room. It was a tiny act of rebellion, reclaiming my space, my senses. I unearthed an old, almost forgotten tablet from the bottom of my closet, a relic from before my first attempt at an influencer career, before Chloe had even considered the path, back when her interests were limited to boys and bad reality TV. It was slow, its screen scratched, its operating system outdated. But it worked, and it was clean, untraceable to my previous online life, a blank slate. My mind raced back to a niche I'd loved in my past life, a passion I'd pursued quietly before being swayed by the allure of mainstream influencing, creating intricate miniature dioramas, telling tiny, silent stories within them. Chloe had always scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Who'd watch that, Alara? It's so nerdy, so pointless. Stick to makeup, it's easier, and people actually care. Her dismissal had stung then, pushing me towards a path that felt less authentic, but more likely to gain her, and, by extension, our parents' approval. Now, her words felt like a gift, a signpost. The miniature art community was passionate, if smaller, and valued artistry, skill, and dedication over fleeting trends and manufactured personalities. I would become Nyx, a name whispered from the shadows, a tribute to the Greek goddess of night, a creator who emerged from darkness. My content would be faceless, voiceless initially, or perhaps with a modulated voice, focusing entirely on the craft, the atmosphere, the subtle narratives woven into each tiny scene. I spent hours sketching ideas, not for beauty tutorials or fashion hauls, but for miniature worlds. A forgotten attic room bathed in dusty moonlight, a rain-swept cyberpunk alleyway glowing with neon reflections, a whimsical forest scene where tiny mythical creatures hid amongst oversized mushrooms. Each detail felt like a reclamation of my creativity, a quiet act of defiance against Chloe's destructive impulses. The familiar frustration of starting over was there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a burgeoning, almost giddy excitement. This wasn't just about revenge, though the thought of succeeding under Chloe's nose was undeniably sweet. It was about building something authentically mine, something Chloe couldn't touch, couldn't understand, and therefore couldn't destroy. As I outlined my first video concept, a time-lapse of a miniature, abandoned library taking shape, complete with tiny, leather-bound books and cobwebs spun from fine thread, set to haunting, royalty-free cello music. I felt a spark of the artist I'd almost allowed them to extinguish. Chloe's preparing for her radiant beauty announcement, probably already practicing her acceptance speech, thinking she's won. Can Nyx find her voice, her audience, before Chloe's victory lap deafens everyone else to anything new? Uploading that first video as Nyx was terrifying. My hands trembled as I hovered the cursor over the publish button. The tablet's screen glowed, a solitary beacon in my darkened room, the only witness to Nyx's tentative birth. The video was simple, shot with the tablet's mediocre camera, the lighting improvised with a desk lamp, and some strategically placed white paper to bounce the light. But the passion, I hoped, was evident in every tiny, carefully placed detail of the miniature library: the peeling wallpaper, the overturned inkwell, the single, flickering LED candle. I used hashtags I'd researched meticulously, targeting the miniature art, diorama, and ASMR communities, terms Chloe wouldn't even recognize, let alone search for. The silence after uploading was deafening, a vast digital void. Had I just sent my fragile creation into oblivion? I forced myself to work on the next concept, a tiny, cluttered artist studio, fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer willpower. The taste was bitter, acrid, much like my current mood towards my family. But the caffeine sharpened my focus, kept the despair at bay. I remembered the SEO tricks, the engagement algorithms, the importance of consistent posting, lessons learned the hard way with Alara Glows, lessons Chloe, with her easy, surface-level success built on looks and our parents' funding, had always ignored, deeming them boring. Then, a notification. A tiny ping from the tablet. A comment. My heart leapt. This is breathtaking. The detail is incredible. I feel like I could step right into it. Another followed. Wow, the atmosphere is amazing. Subscribed. And another, a few shares. It wasn't viral, not by a long shot, but it was real. Genuine appreciation from strangers who knew nothing of Alara, only Nyx. It was a tiny ember, but it glowed with fierce promise in the darkness of my recent defeat. One comment from a user named Orion Gayid was particularly insightful, offering a subtle suggestion about using a cooler light tone to enhance the melancholic mood of the abandoned library. Consider a hint of blue in your key light for future nocturnal scenes. It might deepen the sense of forgotten time. Who was this Orion Guide? Their profile was sparse, almost as new as mine, displaying only an abstract constellation avatar. Yet their advice was professional grade, the kind of critique one might get in an art school. A fellow artist? Or something more? The question lingered, a tiny mystery, as I finally drifted into an exhausted but hopeful sleep, the first truly peaceful sleep I'd had in what felt like a lifetime. A few weeks later, Nyx had cultivated a small but fiercely dedicated following. My miniature scenes, each a tiny world unto itself, were gaining traction for their unique, melancholic beauty and the almost hypnotic quality of the time-lapse builds. I was even starting to get requests for specific themes: a haunted Victorian dollhouse, a post-apocalyptic bunker. It was during this nascent period of growth, this fragile blossoming of Nyx, that Chloe, now fully basking in her radiant beauty partnership and flaunting it at every opportunity, struck her next blow, though not directly at me, or so she thought. Mrs. Gable, a kind elderly woman with flour-dusted hands and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, ran a small, struggling handmade soap and candle shop, the Herbal Nook. It was a local treasure, smelling of lavender, chamomile, and beeswax. She had been a quiet supporter of Alara Glows in my previous life, always leaving gentle, encouraging comments on my posts. I'd cherished her kindness, a rare beacon in a sea of indifference. Now I decided Nyx would subtly feature one of her unique, hand-carved beeswax candles, perhaps in a miniature medieval apothecary scene I was planning. Before I could even sketch the design, Chloe, during a live stream with Maya, her ever-present sycophantic best friend, launched an unprovoked attack. Guys, you have to check out these amazing new scented candles from Glam Glow Inc. Chloe gushed, holding up a sleek, aggressively modern, mass-produced candle in garish packaging. The scent, even imagined, felt synthetic. Maya, ever the echo, chimed in with predictable enthusiasm. So much better than some of that lumpy homemade stuff you see online. Like, who buys that? It's so amateur. Then Chloe, with a smirk of calculated cruelty I knew all too well, pulled up the Herbal Nook's modest online shop page on screen for her thousands of viewers. I mean, look at this, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. So rustic. And the prices for that? They both giggled, a sharp, unpleasant sound, oblivious or, more likely, indifferent to the damage they were inflicting on a small business owner. The next day, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach, I visited Mrs. Gable. The small shop, usually fragrant with drying herbs and the sweet scent of honey, felt heavy with despair. The usually vibrant displays of soaps and candles seemed muted, dusty. The air was thick with the scent of unsold stock and a palpable anxiety. Her eyes, usually bright with a gentle wisdom, were red-rimmed and shadowed. They called my work lumpy, she whispered, her voice trembling as she showed me her tablet. Her shop page, her Facebook page, her tiny Instagram account, all were filled with new, one-star reviews and cruel, mocking comments, clearly orchestrated, many echoing Chloe and Maya's exact phrasing. My sales, they've stopped completely. I might have to close. My heart ached with a cold, familiar anger. This was Chloe's modus operandi. Punch down to elevate herself, crush any perceived competition, however small. Back in my room, the sanctuary where Nyx came alive, I feigned indifference when Chloe breezily mentioned her hilarious livestream later that evening. Oh, that little old shop. Hope they don't take it too seriously, she said, examining her perfectly manicured nails, utterly unconcerned. I just hummed non-committally, offering no reaction for her to feed on. But as Nyx, I began to move. I researched Glam Glow Inc., Chloe's sponsor. It wasn't hard to find whispers of unethical sourcing for their exotic ingredients. complaints about their candles burning unevenly and producing black smoke, and even allegations of poor working conditions in their overseas factories. I also, through some careful digital sleuthing I'd learned from past mistakes, IP address lookups, cross-referencing usernames across platforms, found a pattern in the negative reviews on Mrs. Gable's site. Several traced back to burner accounts with IP addresses suspiciously close to Maya's known locations and her university campus network. It was sloppy, arrogant work on their part. Nix began a new series, The Soul of Craft. Each post, each video subtly celebrated handmade artistry, the dedication of artisans, the beauty of imperfection, the story behind each unique creation. I didn't mention Chloe, Maya, or Glamglow. I didn't need to. My growing audience, drawn to authenticity and Nix's quiet integrity, responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. The contrast was implicit but powerful. Comments like, "This is why I support small makers," and "So tired of mass-produced junk," began to appear. The narrative was shifting. Chloe was planning a massive Glamglow giveaway in a week, her biggest collaboration yet, promising an unbelievable prize package. Could Nix's quiet counter-narrative gather enough storm to rain on her parade? And would Mrs. Gable even have a business left by then? The ticking clock felt deafening, each tick a hammer blow against Mrs. Gable's livelihood. The plan required precision and subtlety, a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. I contacted Mrs. Gable, not as a Lara, the girl whose laptop had mysteriously broken, but through a new anonymous email account, introducing myself as Nix, a fellow creator who admired her work and was appalled by the online bullying she'd endured. I proposed a collaboration, a short artistic video showcasing the beauty of her craft, her hands at work, the story behind the herbal nook. No faces, just the art, the process, the soul. Hesitant at first, crushed by the recent attacks and wary of further exposure, she eventually agreed, her voice trembling with a fragile hope when we spoke briefly using a voice modulator for my end of the call. The faint scent of her drying herbs, even faint over the crackly, anonymized call, seemed to carry her resilience, a quiet strength that Chloe and Maya could never understand. The filming, done discreetly over 2 evenings when her shop was closed, was a quiet, almost reverent process. I focused my old tablet's camera, propped on a stack of soap crates, on her gnarled, skillful hands as they poured molten wax, blended fragrant herbs, and carved intricate details into bars of soap that looked like miniature sculptures. The resulting video, edited with Nix's signature atmospheric style, soft lighting, close-ups on texture, slow dissolves, and a poignant, custom-commissioned instrumental track, paid for with Nix's small but growing ad revenue from YouTube, was one of my best. It was a love letter to craftsmanship, a quiet anthem for the handmade. Simultaneously, I compiled my research on Glamglow Inc.'s questionable practices, the sourcing issues, the worker complaints, the product flaws, and Maya's clumsy troll farm activities into a concise, evidence-backed dossier. I included screenshots, links to obscure online forums discussing Glamglow's issues, and the IP address data. I sent it anonymously from a secure, one-time email address I created at the local library to a small but fiercely independent online ethics blog known for its investigative journalism and its willingness to take on bigger corporations. I didn't expect a headline expose, just a seed of doubt planted in the right place, a small stone to start an avalanche. The Nix video, titled The Chandler's Hands, went live 3 days before Chloe's big Glamglow giveaway. It didn't explode immediately, but it resonated deeply within the crafting community and then, unexpectedly, began to spread. Comments poured in. "This is what true artistry looks like." Makes me rethink those mass-produced brands I've been buying. Where can I buy from this amazing woman? Her work is beautiful. People started asking Nix directly about ethical brands, about supporting small businesses, about how to spot manipulative marketing. The narrative was shifting, organically, powerfully. The air in my room felt charged, the hum of my tablet a quiet battle drum, the scent of lavender a calming counterpoint to the adrenaline coursing through me. The ethics blog hadn't published anything yet. Had my tip been ignored, lost in a sea of submissions? Chloe was already hyping her giveaway, promising the biggest prize ever seen on this platform. Was Nix's gentle ripple too little, too late against Chloe's corporate tidal wave? The day of Chloe's Glam Glow giveaway arrived. She was practically vibrating with excitement, dressed in a new, expensive outfit obviously gifted by the brand, her makeup flawless, her hair professionally styled. "This is going to be epic, Alara. Millions of views. My career is about to go stratospheric," she crowed, oblivious to the storm Nix had quietly brewed. I wished her luck with a neutral expression she mistook for resignation, or perhaps even envy. She patted my head condescendingly. "Don't worry, little sis. Maybe one day you'll get a break too." As her livestream began, the initial comments were fawning, as expected, from her loyal but superficial fanbase. "You look amazing, Chloe. Can't wait for the giveaway." But then a few trickled in, like drops before a storm. "Has anyone seen that beautiful Nix video about the candle maker? So inspiring." "Chloe, what are your thoughts on Glam Glow's sourcing ethics? I read something concerning." Maya, moderating the chat from her own laptop off-screen, frantically tried to delete them, her fingers flying across her keyboard, but more appeared too fast for her to keep up. Then, someone posted a link to the ethics blog. Overnight, they had published a piece, "The Murky Truth Behind Sparkle Brands. Are your favorite influencers promoting problematic products?" It didn't name Chloe directly, but heavily featured Glam Glow Inc. as a prime example of unethical practices and even included anonymized evidence of astroturfed negative reviews against small competitors. My dossier presented clearly and damningly. The chat exploded. Chloe's practiced smile faltered. Her eyes darted nervously towards Maya, who was pale and sweating, her usual smugness gone. Let's focus on the giveaway, guys," Chloe stammered, her voice suddenly high-pitched. But the tide had turned. Viewers were now openly discussing Glam Glow's issues, praising Nix's integrity, and sharing links to Mrs. Gable's shop. The Glam Glow representative, who was supposed to join the live stream for the big prize announcement, never appeared. Instead, a terse message flashed on Maya's screen. I caught a glimpse of the Glam Glow logo before Maya quickly minimized it, likely from the brand, pulling the plug, disassociating themselves from the unfolding PR disaster. Chloe's composure shattered. She fumbled, tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. Her viewer count, prominently displayed on the screen, plummeted. In the aftermath, Mrs. Gable's shop was flooded with supportive messages and, more importantly, orders. She called me later, not as Nix, but as Alara, having made the connection from my previous support, weeping with gratitude, her voice thick with emotion. Nix, you saved my shop. You saved me." The warmth of her words was a balm, a true victory. Nix's follower count meanwhile surged. Authenticity, it turned out, had a powerful currency. Later that evening, Chloe, a wreck of tear-streaked makeup and deflated ego, her expensive outfit looking rumpled and sad, cornered me in the kitchen. The scent of her expensive perfume was now soured by her distress and the faint, lingering aroma of burnt toast. Mom's stress baking. That Nix creature, she ruined everything," she seethed, her voice raw. Then her eyes narrowed suspiciously, the old cunning returning. "You wouldn't know anything about her, would you, Alara? This all seems a little too convenient. You were always good with that nerdy computer stuff." I met her gaze, my own carefully blank, my heart rate picking up slightly. Nix? The one who does those little dollhouse things? Why would I know her? Her suspicion was a new, dangerous variable. Had I been too effective? Had I inadvertently pointed her gaze, however vaguely, in my direction? The Glam Glow fiasco had left Chloe shaken and her online reputation tarnished. But she was not entirely defeated. She was already scheming her comeback, muttering about hater sabotage, and planning a truth bomb video that never materialized. Meanwhile, Nix was thriving, my subscriber base growing steadily, my content praised for its artistry and integrity. But I hit a technical wall. My old tablet and the free, borrowed software I was using were limiting the quality and complexity of my dioramas and videos. I needed an upgrade, a proper editing computer, a better camera, and a professional online course in advanced digital storytelling and miniature lighting. My grandmother, Nana Elspeth, had left me a small college fund, carefully saved, which I'd mentally earmarked for this. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give Nix the tools she needed to truly soar. I approached my parents, my carefully prepared proposal in hand, explaining my plan, showing them Nix's modest but consistent earnings, the overwhelmingly positive engagement, the potential for real growth. My father, a man who understood spreadsheets better than emotions, looked skeptical, his brow furrowed. It's still just a hobby, Alara, a risky one. My mother, however, exchanged a glance with him that I knew boded ill, a silent, loaded communication that always preceded bad news for me. Well, dear, Mom began, her voice laced with that familiar tone of gentle, patronizing dismissal. That's nice, very creative. But Chloe has this incredible opportunity, an influencer retreat in Bali. It's very exclusive for networking with top-tier creators. She just needs a little help with the fees. And the flight. The scent of her Chanel No. 5, usually a comforting childhood memory, now felt like a silken trap, suffocating me. My college fund? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, the words barely a whisper. Don't be dramatic, Alara, Dad said, his tone impatient. Chloe's career is really taking off, despite that unfortunate glam glow business. This retreat could be huge for her, a real game changer. Your Nix thing, it's a hobby, isn't it? You can save up for your computer some other time. Chloe needs this now. The unfairness was a physical blow, stealing my breath, leaving a cold hollowness in my chest. They saw Chloe's flashy, superficial metrics, her desperate chase for fame, as potential, while my quiet, authentic growth, my genuine connection with an audience, was dismissed as a hobby. In my past life, I'd have raged, pleaded, dissolved into tears, a messy emotional outburst that would have only confirmed their perception of me as unstable and immature. This time, a chilling calm settled over me. I simply said, I see. I let them believe they'd won, that I'd accepted their decision, that Alara was still their compliant, easily dismissed daughter. That night, the silence of my room was a canvas for my fury and resolve. They would not break me. They would not derail Nix. Nix would get her upgrade one way or another. I drafted a new post for Nix's community, the 1,000 Doors Challenge. If Nix reached 50,000 subscribers by the end of the month, an audacious leap from my current 15,000, I would create my most ambitious diorama yet. A sprawling, interactive miniature city with 1,000 tiny openable doors, each revealing a different microstory, a different hidden world. It was a massive undertaking, but the idea thrilled me. I also, with a tremor of nervousness, launched a Patreon and Ko-fi page, framed not as a plea for help, but as help Nix build bigger, more intricate worlds, become a patron of the miniature arts. Chloe, oblivious to my silent scheming, flaunted her Bali plans, posting filtered selfies with her packed luggage, her new resort wear. Paradise awaits! So excited to connect and create with my fellow visionaries, #BaliBound #influencer journey. She captioned one particularly smug photo. My jaw tightened. The subscriber goal was a mountain, almost insurmountable in such a short time. Could Nix's community, as loyal as they were, make it happen? And then, a notification pinged on my tablet. Orion Guide has become your first Master Artisan tier patron. The pledge was significant, enough for a down payment on the computer. Who was this person, this enigmatic benefactor, and why were they investing so much in Nix and me? The next few weeks were a blur of relentless creation. Sleep became a luxury, a distant memory. My diet consisted of instant noodles, the salty, artificial broth, a poor substitute for real food, and endless cups of coffee, the stale, reheated scent, a constant in my small room. I poured every ounce of my energy, creativity, and past life knowledge into Nix. I analyzed viral trends, not in the beauty space Chloe still clung to, but in storytelling, ASMR, crafting communities, and even indie gaming. I experimented with new camera angles, propping my tablet on precarious stacks of books and using a tiny, cheap clip-on macro lens. More complex narratives in my dioramas, and even subtle ARG, alternate reality game elements, woven into Nix's lore, which my audience, particularly the more engaged ones, loved, dissecting clues and sharing theories in dedicated forums. My subscriber count climbed steadily, fueled by the Thousand Doors Challenge anticipation and the genuine connection Nyx had forged with her audience. They appreciated the transparency, the artistry, the lack of corporate shilling. But 50,000 felt impossibly distant, a shimmering mirage on the horizon. Chloe, meanwhile, was already in Bali, her Instagram feed a painful, relentless stream of turquoise waters, artfully arranged smoothie bowls, and group shots with other preening influencers, all hashtagged #blessed and #livingmybestlife. Each post was a fresh stab of resentment, a reminder of the funds that should have been mine, now being squandered on her vanity project. Then, something unexpected happened. One of Nyx's videos, a particularly poignant diorama depicting a tiny, cluttered writer's attic, complete with miniature overflowing ashtrays and stacks of manuscripts, with a voiceover, modulated of course, musing on creativity, solitude, and the bittersweet struggle of the artistic process, was picked up by a mainstream art and culture blog with a massive readership. It went viral overnight, far beyond my niche. New subscribers flooded in, not just for the challenge, but because they connected with Nyx's unique, introspective style, her quiet rebellion against the noise of mainstream influencer culture. Throughout this surge, Orion Gaid was a silent but powerful force. They didn't just pledge, they shared Nyx's content in influential closed online forums Alara would never have known existed. Forums for professional artists, collectors, gallery owners, even tech investors interested in new media. Each share brought a fresh wave of discerning, high-value followers, people who appreciated the craft and the message. I sent Orion Gaid a heartfelt thank you message via Patreon, expressing my bewildered gratitude. Their reply was, as always, brief and enigmatic. Talent deserves a stage. Focus on your art. The universe favors the brave. The anonymity was both frustrating and intriguing. The scent of old books and dust that I imagined clung to Orion Gaid, perhaps from a vast personal library, was a curious counterpoint to the slick digital world they navigated so expertly for Nyx. With 3 days left in the challenge, Nyx smashed the 50,000 subscriber goal. The outpouring from the community was overwhelming, a tidal wave of support and excitement. My Patreon and Ko-fi had generated enough to buy the new computer, the professional software, and enroll in the advanced online course. I was about to click Confirm Purchase on a high-spec editing rig, my hand trembling with a mixture of triumph and disbelief when my personal phone, rarely used, buzzed violently on the desk. It was Chloe. Her voice was frantic, choked with tears, barely recognizable. Alara, you have to help me. It's a disaster. The retreat, it's a scam. The organizer's gone with everyone's money. I'm stuck here. I have no way to get home. The delicious, savage irony was almost too much to bear. Chloe, the golden child, stranded by a scam in paradise, while Nyx, the dismissed hobby, funded by genuine support and her own hard work, was about to soar. But her panic sounded real, raw. What exactly had happened in Bali to shatter her composure so completely? Chloe's tearful, incoherent explanation over the crackling international call painted a grim picture. The exclusive influencer retreat was a well-orchestrated, sophisticated fraud. The luxurious villa they'd seen in glossy brochures was a shoddily rented Airbnb with plumbing issues. The industry workshops with global brand leaders were non-existent. And the charismatic organizer, a smooth-talking charlatan named Rex Sterling, had vanished on day 2, along with the hefty fees paid by Chloe and 24 other hopeful and now humiliated influencers. They were left in Bali with no return tickets, dwindling funds, and a mountain of shattered dreams. The story broke online quickly, other duped influencers sharing their tales of woe, their humiliation and anger amplified by the public nature of their aspirational lifestyles. Chloe's Living My Best Life posts were now targets of ridicule and schadenfreude. Guess her #blessed ran out, one particularly vicious commenter snarked under her last Bali selfie. My parents were beside themselves. Frantic calls to the embassy, desperate attempts to wire money, which I suspected they didn't readily have after funding Chloe's once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The air in our house crackled with their anxiety, the scent of my mother's burnt toast, a sure sign of her deep distress, filling the kitchen and stinging my nostrils. Then, inevitably, they turned to me, their faces pale and drawn. "Alara," my father began, his voice strained, his usual bluster gone. "Chloe is in a terrible state, a truly awful situation. We need to help her. That Nix thing of yours, it seems to be doing quite well. You mentioned some fundraising." I looked at them, then at the glowing screen of my old tablet, where the order confirmation for my new, powerful editing computer. Nix's computer, earned by Nix's hard work and her community's unwavering belief, waited for a final click. The irony was a bitter pill they were unknowingly asking me to sweeten for them, to sacrifice my hard-won success for their favored daughter's latest folly. I remembered their dismissive words with crystal clarity. "Your Nix thing? It's a hobby." Now that hobby was their only hope for rescuing their precious Chloe. I felt a strange detachment, a cold clarity that was becoming increasingly familiar. The old Alara would have been torn, guilt-ridden, probably already transferring funds. The new Alara, the one who was also Nix, the one who remembered everything, saw the situation with an almost clinical precision. This was another test, another attempt, however unintentional, to pull me back into their dysfunctional orbit. "I'll need to think about it," I said, my voice carefully neutral, betraying none of the turmoil or the grim satisfaction I felt. "I have some significant financial commitments for Nix's projects right now." Their faces fell. My mother's eyes welled up with tears of frustration and disappointment. "But Alara, she's your sister. How can you even hesitate?" I retreated to my room, the scent of their desperation and my mother's burnt toast clinging to me like a shroud. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, then, with a steady hand, clicked Confirm Purchase. The new computer would arrive in 3 days. As for Chloe, her predicament was of her own making, fueled by the very system of superficiality and instant gratification she worshipped. My no wasn't spoken yet, but it was forming, solid and unyielding as granite in my heart. But how would I deliver it? And what would be the fallout when they realized my hobby was now more successful and solvent than Chloe's entire career had ever been? The real question, however, the one that still gnawed at me with a persistent low hum, was about Orion Gade. Who were they, really? And what was their ultimate game? Their latest message after I'd shared Nix's subscriber milestone and the successful fundraising was simply, "Justice has many forms, some swift, some slow. Keep creating, your path is clear." With the new equipment and the skills gleaned from the advanced online course, Nix's content soared to new heights of artistry and production value. The Thousand Doors diorama, a project that consumed weeks of meticulous labor, was a masterpiece of miniature engineering and interactive storytelling. Each tiny door, crafted from balsa wood and painted with intricate detail, opened to reveal a unique micro-scene, a miniature alien landscape, a scholar's cluttered desk, a tiny glowing portal. It captivated hundreds of thousands, sparking theories, fan art, and even collaborative storytelling threads in Nix's burgeoning online community. Nix was no longer just a niche creator. She was an emerging digital artist, recognized for her unique vision and uncompromising quality. Brands, legitimate, ethical brands that aligned with Nix's values, like sustainable art supply companies and independent bookstores, began to approach her for collaborations. I did interviews, always as Nix, using a custom-designed ethereal avatar and my carefully modulated voice, the mystique only adding to the appeal. The scent of success was no longer just a metaphor. It was the faint, pleasant hum of new electronics in my quiet room, the crisp paper of properly drafted contracts, the empowering freedom to say no to projects that didn't feel right, that didn't align with Nix's carefully cultivated ethos. Chloe eventually made it back from Bali, bailed out by a loan from a distant, long-suffering aunt, as I had indeed thought about it, and concluded that Nix's funds were for Nix's future, not for rescuing Chloe from her own poor judgment. She was subdued, her usual arrogance blunted by public humiliation and the crushing weight of debt. Her influencer career was in tatters. Her followers had dwindled, and the comments on her sporadic, half-hearted posts were either pitying or openly mocking. She watched Nix's meteoric rise from a distance. As a regular internet user, since I'd blocked her on all Nix's platforms after the Glam Glow incident, with a poisonous blend of envy and bitterness that was almost palpable. "It's not fair," she'd complain loudly to our parents, who now looked at me with a new, uncomfortable mixture of resentment for my refusal to help and a dawning, grudging respect for Nix's undeniable success. Some anonymous freak gets all this luck, making stupid dollhouses while I, with actual talent and a real personality, get scammed and ridiculed. She began to subtly, then overtly, try to imitate Nix's style. Her attempts at moody vlogs with whispered voiceovers or artistic product placements featuring dimly lit, cluttered backgrounds were clumsy, inauthentic, and fell completely flat. Her audience, accustomed to her bright, vapid content, was confused. The art community, if they even saw it, would have cringed. It was like watching a tone-deaf singer try to replicate an opera after hearing it once. I observed her struggles with a detached sort of pity. The old Ilara might have felt a pang of guilt, or even offered misguided help. Nix, however, knew that some lessons had to be learned the hard way, if they were to be learned at all. My focus was on my own path, on building, creating, and honoring the community that had lifted Nix up. The air in our home, when I was forced to be there, was often thick with unspoken tensions. Chloe's simmering resentment a constant, unpleasant background noise, like the buzzing of a trapped, angry fly. One evening, Chloe, after watching a particularly glowing media piece about Nix's innovative storytelling, slammed her laptop shut with such force I heard the plastic crack from my room. "I'm going to find out who this Nix really is," she declared to the empty living room, her voice tight with a dangerous glint I recognized. "Nobody is that perfect, that mysterious, without something to hide. And I'm going to expose her." Was her jealousy finally pushing her towards a focused investigation? How close could she get to the truth with her limited skills but boundless malice? Amidst Nix's growing fame and Chloe's festering resentment, a ghost from my past resurfaced. Liam, my old high school crush, the boy whose casual cruelty had been a defining feature of my teenage misery. In my previous life, and even in this one before my rebirth, Liam had been a source of acute, burning humiliation. Egged on by Chloe, who had always delighted in my discomfort, he'd once found a notebook of my earnest, terrible teenage poetry, full of angst and badly rhymed declarations of unrequited love for him, and read it aloud with dramatic mockery and exaggerated gestures to a laughing group of our peers in the crowded school cafeteria. The memory still brought a flush of shame, the phantom scent of cheap cafeteria food, greasy pizza and stale disinfectant, and the sting of his cutting laughter echoing in my ears. Later, when I first tried to be an influencer as Alara Glows, pre-deletion, pre-rebirth, he'd left scathing, sarcastic comments on my clumsy makeup tutorials, always siding with Chloe's more subtle, undermining derision. "Great look, Alara, if you're auditioning for clown college," one particularly charming comment had read. Now Liam, clearly seeing Nix's rising star and the media buzz around her, began to slide into Nix's DMs. His messages were cloyingly familiar, oozing a false sincerity that made my skin crawl. "Hey, Nix, amazing work. Seriously mind-blowing. I feel like we just get each other, you know? Your vibe is so unique, so authentic." He'd try to name-drop people or places from our town, clearly fishing, assuming Nix might be local, perhaps even someone he knew. "There's this cool little art cafe downtown, the Crimson Mug, ever been? They have great open mic nights. We should totally collab. I've got some great ideas for a spoken word piece over one of your dioramas." The Crimson Mug, the very place where he'd performed his poetic assassination on my teenage soul. The audacity was breathtaking. I, as Nix, responded with polite, professional, but utterly impersonal thanks. "Thank you for your kind words and support. Nix appreciates all her viewers and their enthusiasm for the art." This only seemed to spur him on. His DMs became more frequent, more insistent, bordering on demanding. "Seriously, Nix, I think a collab between us would break the internet. I'm pretty well connected in the local arts scene, you know. I could introduce you to some key people." His arrogance was astounding, unchanged by time or circumstance. He clearly had no idea he was talking to the girl he'd once delighted in tormenting, the girl whose creative sparks he'd tried to extinguish with his mockery. The irony was almost painful, a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth. He who had mocked Alara's fledgling, vulnerable efforts was now desperately trying to ride Nyx's coattails, to bask in her reflected glory. I could almost smell the desperation on him, mingled with that old, familiar scent of Axe body spray he used to douse himself in, a scent that now triggered a Pavlovian wave of nausea. Part of me, the wounded teenager still lurking somewhere deep inside, wanted to lash out, to expose him, to humiliate him as he had humiliated me. But Nyx was above that. Nyx had a different kind of power, a quieter, more potent strength. Then Liam, clearly frustrated by Nyx's cool detachment and professional boundaries, posted a vague, passive-aggressive tweet. Pretty sure I've figured out the secret ID of a certain mysterious artsy influencer. Lots of little clues adding up. Tea about to be spilled? #Nyx, #secret identity, #influencer drama. He was bluffing, trying to smoke me out, to bully Nyx into engaging, into acknowledging him. How would Nyx, the calm, enigmatic artist, respond to such a blatant, clumsy threat from a past tormentor? Liam's tweet caused a minor stir, a ripple in the vast ocean of online drama. A few gossip blogs, always hungry for a scandal, picked it up, speculating wildly. My stomach churned with a mixture of old anger and new anxiety. He was playing a dangerous game, threatening the anonymity that was crucial to Nyx's persona, and, more importantly, to my peace of mind. But a direct confrontation, a public denial, would be messy, exactly what he wanted, giving him the attention he craved. Instead, Nyx released a new piece of content the next day, not a diorama, but a beautifully animated short video, using stop motion with some of my miniature figures, accompanied by a modulated voiceover. It was titled, "The Echo Chamber and the Open Window." In it, Nyx spoke eloquently, not about Liam, but about the pressures of online life, the value of privacy for creators, the difference between genuine connection and clout chasing, and the quiet dignity of choosing what parts of oneself to share with the world. The animation depicted a tiny figure tending a fragile plant in a glass dome, while outside, shadowy figures clamored for attention. It never mentioned Liam or his tweet, but the message was unmistakable, a subtle but firm rebuke. It was a masterclass in indirect response, resonating deeply with Nyx's audience, who valued her thoughtful, introspective approach. The scent of digital rain and old parchment, a metaphorical aroma I often tried to evoke in Nyx's work, seemed to emanate from the piece. The response was immediate and powerful. Nyx's fans, fiercely loyal and intelligent, flooded Liam's tweet with comments, not attacking him viciously, but calmly pointing out how his actions were disrespectful, invasive, and contradicted the very values Nyx championed. Trying to dox someone for clout? Not cool, dude. Let artists create in peace. Nyx shares her art, not her private life. If you were a real fan, you'd respect that. Liam, clearly unprepared for such articulate, widespread pushback from a dedicated fan base, and probably realizing he'd overplayed his hand, quickly deleted his tweet. A few hours later, a sheepish private DM landed in Nyx's inbox from him. "Hey, sorry about that tweet. Got a bit carried away. Still a huge fan, really? No hard feelings?" He sounded pathetic, deflated. I felt a profound, quiet satisfaction. No screaming match, no dramatic takedown, just a calm assertion of boundaries. A strategic move that turned his own weapon against him. He'd been publicly and gracefully shut down, his attempted power play neutralized. Later that day, a new message from Orion Gaidi arrived via the Patreon messaging system. It was more personal than usual, less enigmatic. "Some masks are for protection, others for deception. You handled that gadfly with admirable composure and strategic grace. Your grandmother, Elspeth, always said true strength was quietest, that the loudest voice in the room often had the least to say. She would be immensely proud of the resilience and wisdom you're showing." My blood ran cold. Elspeth, my grandmother's name. And not just her name, but a sentiment she had often expressed, one I'd almost forgotten. A piece of her quiet wisdom that had faded with her memory. How could Orion Guide possibly know that? Nana Elspeth had passed away 5 years ago, long before Nyx, long before even my first failed attempts as a Lara Glows in this lifetime. A shiver traced its way down my spine, cold and sharp. The comforting, dusty book scent I associated with Orion, the imagined aroma of a wise, benevolent scholar, suddenly felt charged with an almost supernatural prescience, an unsettling intimacy. Who was Orion Gade? This wasn't just a wealthy fan or a savvy mentor with good connections. This was someone who knew things they shouldn't, things deeply personal to Alara, not Nyx. The mystery of Orion deepened, now tinged with an unnerving, almost familial familiarity that sent a prickle of both fear and intense curiosity through me. The message from Orion Guide, mentioning my grandmother, Elspeth by name, and quoting her so accurately, left me reeling. It was too specific, too intimate, a direct hit on a deeply personal memory. My carefully constructed walls between Alara and Nyx, between my past pain and my present creation, felt suddenly porous, almost transparent. For days, I obsessed over it, rereading the words, trying to decipher the implication, the connection. The scent of the cedar chest where Nana Elspeth kept her treasured possessions, old lace, faded photographs, a few pieces of antique jet jewelry, her favorite worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, flooded my memory with an almost painful clarity. A place I hadn't opened in years, a sanctuary of her presence I hadn't dared disturb. Then, a new communication arrived from Orion Gade, not through Patreon this time, but via a heavily encrypted email to a secure address Nyx used for sensitive brand communications and legal matters. The subject line was simply, regarding Elspeth's legacy. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might break free. The email was brief, formal, requesting an in-person, highly confidential meeting at my earliest convenience. To prove their bona fides, to assure me this wasn't some elaborate phishing attempt or a cruel hoax, they referenced a specific, obscure childhood memory. The time I, as a 7-year-old, had rescued a ladybug from a particularly intricate spiderweb in Nana Elspeth's prize-winning rose garden. She'd found me carefully transporting the ladybug on a leaf and had smiled, calling me her little knight, defender of the small. No one else knew that story, that nickname. Not my parents, not Chloe, no one. A wave of dizziness washed over me. This was real. This was undeniably about my grandmother, but what legacy? She had been a retired librarian, living modestly in a small, book-filled bungalow, comfortable but by no means wealthy, or so I'd always believed. Her greatest treasures were her books and her garden. Meanwhile, Chloe's obsession with unmasking Nyx had intensified into a manic crusade. She was spending hours online, cross-referencing Nyx's early posts with local events, trying to pinpoint a geographical origin, even analyzing the faint background noises in Nyx's older, less polished videos. She'd even tried, clumsily, to install spyware on the family computer, which I'd thankfully caught and neutralized, my old tech skills proving useful once more. Her frustration was making her reckless, her accusations more wild. She was getting closer, not to Nyx's identity, but to making my life as Alara unbearable with her constant suspicions and pointed questions. The air in the house felt like a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. The pressure was immense, a suffocating blanket. I replied to Orion Guide's encrypted email, my fingers trembling as I typed, agreeing to the meeting. The instructions that followed were like something out of a spy novel. A burner phone would be delivered to a neutral P.O. box I occasionally used for Nyx's fan mail. Further communication would be via coded text messages. On the day of the meeting, I was to follow a series of seemingly random locations to pass through. A specific bench in a park, a particular aisle in a quiet bookstore, a coffee shop where I was to order a specific drink. Before arriving at the final meeting place, an unassuming office building in a quiet downtown district I barely knew, far from my usual haunts. Was this an elaborate trap? Was Orion Gade truly benevolent, as their support for Nyx suggested? Or was this some elaborate, unimaginable scheme? And with Chloe sniffing around like a bloodhound, her suspicions now laser-focused on anyone with even a hint of artistic talent or computer literacy, could I even manage this clandestine meeting without her noticing my unusual movements, my prolonged absence? The stakes felt impossibly high, my future hanging in the balance. Following the intricate, almost comically cloak-and-dagger instructions, my nerves frayed to breaking point, I arrived at the designated office. It was a discreet, old-money law firm, Finch and Associates. The scent of old leather, polished mahogany, expensive paper, and floor wax filled the air, a world away from my cluttered bedroom studio and the smell of craft glue and anxiety. I was ushered by a polite, silent receptionist into a large, book-lined office, the kind you saw in movies about powerful, benevolent patriarchs. Behind a grand antique desk sat Orion Gaid, not some shadowy tech guru or eccentric art collector, but Mr. Alistair Finch, a distinguished silver-haired gentleman in his late 60s, with kind, intelligent eyes that held a hint of amusement and a gentle, reassuring smile. He was, he explained, my grandmother Elspeth's lawyer, her closest confidant, and the executor of her estate. He began to unravel a story that left me breathless, speechless, my carefully constructed reality shattering around me. My Nana Elspeth, the quiet librarian, the gentle gardener, had also been an incredibly shrewd, fiercely private, and remarkably successful investor. Starting with a small inheritance from her own grandmother in her youth, she'd built a substantial portfolio over decades. Focusing on emerging technologies, she had an uncanny knack for identifying and undervalued art from promising young artists. She had foreseen with heartbreaking clarity the potential for family strife. Chloe's burgeoning narcissism, our parents' tendency towards enabling her and their financial irresponsibility, and worried deeply about my future, knowing my sensitive nature and my quiet, often overlooked talents. Elspeth set up a significant trust fund for you, Alara, Mr. Finch explained, his voice warm and steady, a comforting anchor in the swirling chaos of my emotions. And a series of resources, connections, mentorship opportunities, access to certain assets. But she stipulated it was only to be fully revealed and accessed when you demonstrated true resilience, independence, and the ability to forge your own path, free from detrimental family influence, and specifically when you had achieved a measure of success through your own endeavors. My success as Nyx, my ability to overcome adversity, to rebuild from scratch, to build something authentic and valuable, had been the trigger. He, as Orion Guide, had been tasked by Elspeth's detailed instructions to provide subtle nudges, initial support, like the first significant Patreon pledge and the strategic shares in those influential forums, to guide, not carry, to test my mettle. He then revealed the extent of it, not just the trust fund, which was considerable, enough to ensure I'd never have to worry about money again, but also a portfolio of digital assets Nana had presciently invested in, valuable domain names, seed shares in now booming tech startups, even early cryptocurrency holdings that had appreciated astronomically. I was, effectively, independently wealthy. The room seemed to tilt, the bookshelves swimming before my eyes. The weight of her love, her foresight, her unwavering belief in me was overwhelming. Tears streamed down my face, tears of shock, gratitude, and a profound, aching love for the grandmother I realized I'd never truly known. Mr. Finch handed me a crisp linen handkerchief that smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, just like her chest of treasures. "She also left you this," he said, his eyes twinkling as he passed me a small, ornate antique silver key. "A studio apartment she owned downtown, fully paid for, utilities covered by the trust. A place of your own, a sanctuary, should you ever need it." Just as I was processing this monumental, life-altering shift in my reality, my burner phone, still clutched in my trembling hand, buzzed violently. A text message from a trusted friend in Nyx's online community, someone who helped moderate Nyx's forums. "Urgent! Chloe is live on Insta, says she's exposing Nyx right now, claims she has irrefutable proof. Thousands are watching." My world had just been rebuilt from the foundations up. A future of security and freedom laid out before me, only for Chloe to try and tear down the facade of Nyx, the very creation that had unlocked this legacy. But did it even matter anymore, now that Alara had resources, a sanctuary, that Nana Elspeth had so lovingly, so wisely ensured she'd have? My heart leaped into my throat, a reflexive jolt of old fear, but Mr. Finch simply raised a calming hand, his expression serene. "We anticipated this eventuality, Alara, or rather, Elspeth did. Your grandmother knew Chloe's nature, her destructive jealousy, better than anyone." He gestured to a sleek monitor discreetly built into his credenza, already tuned to Chloe's live stream. Chloe was hysterical, pacing her messy bedroom, her face flushed and blotchy, her hair disheveled. "I have proof!" she shrieked, waving a crumpled printout from some obscure online forum. Nix posted about a local craft fair, the Artisan's Alley, on a specific date. And guess what? Ilara mentioned going to that exact same fair on that exact same day in her stupid diary I found. And Nix uses the word ephemeral all the time. Ilara used that in a school essay once. I remember because the teacher praised her for it and not me. Her evidence was laughably thin, circumstantial at best, and delivered with an unhinged fervor that made her look more desperate and pathetic than credible. The live chat was a chaotic mix of confused Knicks fans, skeptical onlookers, and Chloe's few remaining sycophants. "This is a reach, Chloe. Where's the actual proof? This is just speculation. OMG, Chloe, you're a genius." A profound calm, born of the day's earth-shattering revelations, settled over me. The fear of exposure, which had been a constant shadow, a persistent hum of anxiety beneath the surface of my life, evaporated like mist in the morning sun. With Nana Elspeth's legacy securing my future, my independence, Chloe's attempts to destroy Nix felt petty, insignificant. Nix was more than an anonymous persona now. She was a testament to my resilience, the very quality my grandmother had sought to reward, the key that had unlocked this incredible gift. Mr. Finch, ever prepared, had already drafted a statement. As Nix, using a secure laptop he provided, I logged into my primary account and posted it across all platforms. Art speaks for itself. My identity is my own and is secondary to the worlds I create. Attempts to distract from the work with unfounded speculation and personal attacks are regrettable, but ultimately irrelevant. Nix will continue to create and share. Thank you for your understanding and your continued support of the art. It was dignified, dismissive, and powerful in its restraint. It didn't deny, it didn't confirm, it simply rose above. Then, as Ilara, I did something I'd only dreamed of, something that felt more liberating than anything Nix had ever achieved. I picked up my personal phone, the one Chloe and my parents could reach me on, and sent a simple, concise text message to my parents. "I'm moving out today. I've found my own place. I'll be in touch when I'm settled. Please respect my privacy." The sense of liberation was intoxicating, like cool, clean air rushing into a stuffy, suffocating room. The scent of possibility, of freedom, was suddenly everywhere, sharp and exhilarating. Chloe's livestream imploded. Her wild accusations, met with Nix's calm, professional statement and a glaring lack of any real evidence, made her a laughingstock. Her follower count, visibly displayed on her stream, began to drop precipitously. My personal phone immediately rang. My mother, her voice shrill with panic and disbelief. "Ilara, what is this about moving out? And Chloe is having a complete meltdown. What on earth is going on? You need to come home right now." For the first time, their panic didn't touch me, didn't trigger that old, familiar guilt. I was holding a small, antique silver key in my palm, a key to my own apartment, a key to my own life. How would I respond to their frantic summons now that the power dynamic had irrevocably and wonderfully flipped in my favor? The studio apartment Nana Elspeth had left me was perfect. Not large, but with high ceilings that gave it an airy feel, a large bay window overlooking a surprisingly green and tranquil city park, and the faint, clean scent of recent vacancy, a blank canvas ready for my own imprint. Mr. Finch had arranged for it to be freshly painted in a warm, neutral cream. Within days, I'd moved in my few belongings, clothes, books, and the essential components of Nix's workshop, and, more importantly, set up a dedicated, soundproofed corner for Nix's recording and crafting, complete with my new high-powered computer and professional lighting. The quiet, efficient hum of my new computer was a comforting presence, a soundtrack to my newfound independence. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I felt truly safe, truly at home. I started exploring my new independence with a quiet joy. I opened a bank account that only I controlled, a simple act that felt monumental. I met with the financial advisor Mr. Finch recommended, a kind, patient woman who explained Nana's investments in clear, understandable terms. And I felt a thrill of competence as I began to understand this new aspect of my life, this unexpected stewardship. Nyx continued to flourish, her community growing, her projects becoming more ambitious. But now the pressure was different. It was the pressure of joyful creation, of meeting my own artistic standards, not the desperate, grinding pressure of survival. I even started sketching ideas for a personal art project, something just for Alara, unrelated to Nyx. A series of portraits, perhaps, or abstract landscapes. The scent of new canvases and oil paints, purchased with my own money, mingled with the aroma of the fresh, strong coffee I brewed each morning in my own small, sunlit kitchen. My parents, however, were struggling to adapt to this new reality, this Alara who was no longer under their roof or their control. They called constantly, their tone oscillating between feigned concern for my well-being. "Are you eating properly, dear? It's not safe for a young woman to live alone." And thinly veiled demands for explanations and, implicitly, a return to the old order. "Alara, dear, we're worried about you, all alone in that strange place. When are you coming to visit? We need to talk about Chloe. She's not doing well." I kept my responses polite but brief, establishing firm boundaries with a resolve that surprised even myself. "I'm doing well, thank you. I need some time to settle in. I'll let you know when I'm ready for visitors." Their bewilderment, their frustration was palpable even over the phone. They were losing control and they didn't like it one bit. One afternoon, the buzzer to my apartment shrieked, a harsh, demanding sound that shattered the peaceful quiet. I checked the intercom camera. It was Chloe. She stood in the hallway, looking disheveled, her usually perfect hair lank, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, a stark contrast to her usual polished, Instagram-ready appearance. She'd clearly wheedled the address from our distraught, easily manipulated parents. "Alara," she said, her voice raspy, barely a croak. "We need to talk, please. I know you're Nyx. I figured it out. I messed up. So badly." Her admission hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. This wasn't the arrogant, accusatory Chloe of the disastrous live stream. This was someone broken, defeated. But was it genuine remorse or just another manipulation? Another desperate ploy? And how would I, in the newfound peace of my own sanctuary, respond to the architect of so much of my past pain standing on my doorstep, begging for entry? I let Chloe in, a courtesy, not an invitation. My small studio, usually a haven of calm and creative energy, felt instantly crowded, contaminated by her agitated presence. The scent of her stale, expensive perfume and a faint, sour aroma of desperation warred with the clean, fresh scent of my new life, the lemon polish on my bookshelves, the hint of lavender from a sachet. She launched into a torrent of apologies, words tumbling over each other in a frantic, incoherent rush. "I'm so sorry, Alara, for everything. Deleting your accounts, the laptop, what I said about Mrs. Gable trying to expose Nyx. I was jealous. So jealous. And insecure. Maya egged me on, and I felt like I was failing, while this Nyx was perfect, and everyone loved her." Tears streamed down her face, genuine this time, I thought, but they seemed to be tears born of self-pity, of her own downfall, more than true empathy for the pain she'd inflicted on me. She begged for my help, her voice cracking. "You have to help me, Alara. My career is over. No one will work with me. Brands won't touch me. Maybe Nyx could do a collaboration? Or you could teach me how you do it. How you make those little things. You owe me that much, we're sisters. You have to help your family." The audacity, even in her desperation, was breathtaking. The entitlement still clung to her like a second skin. As if on cue, summoned by a frantic text from Chloe, no doubt, my parents arrived, bustling in with worried expressions and a forced, placating sympathy. They must have been waiting downstairs. "Alara, thank goodness," my mother began, rushing towards me, her hands outstretched as if to comfort a child. "Chloe has told us everything. She's truly sorry. We're sorry, too, for not seeing, for not supporting you enough, for always. Well, for everything." My father nodded gravely, his face a mask of paternal concern. "She's learned her lesson, a very hard lesson. We're family, Alara. We need to forgive and forget, help each other move forward." Maya even sent a long, rambling text message during this family intervention, full of self-serving excuses and pleas for Alara to tell Chloe she wasn't really that bad and that everyone makes mistakes. I listened to it all, my expression calm, my hands resting loosely in my lap. The Alara of the past would have been overwhelmed, guilted, perhaps even swayed by their combined emotional onslaught, by the sheer weight of their expectations. But I wasn't her anymore. I looked at Chloe's tear-streaked, hopeful face, at my parents' anxious, expectant eyes. The years of casual cruelty, of being dismissed, undermined, and actively sabotaged played out in my mind, not as fresh, bleeding wounds, but as historical facts, entries in a ledger that was now closed. I understand that you feel sorry now, I said, my voice even and quiet, cutting through their pleas with a soft but undeniable firmness. The words are easy to say when you're facing the consequences of your actions. I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting my words sink in. But the damage wasn't just to my social media or my laptop or my potential income. It was to me, to my trust, to my spirit. You did that repeatedly over years. Then, to their expectant faces, to Chloe's desperate hope for a lifeline, to my parents' earnest plea for a return to a dysfunctional normalcy where my needs were secondary, I delivered my answer simple and unequivocal. No. A stunned, disbelieving silence descended upon the small room. No, Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief, her tear-streaked face crumpling. What? What do you mean, no? My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father stared, speechless. This was not the outcome they had orchestrated. This was not the compliant, forgiving Alara they knew, the one they could always manipulate. The power had truly shifted, and my quiet two-letter refusal was a seismic event in their world, a fundamental rewriting of the family script. Chloe's disbelief quickly morphed into sputtering anger, her default response when thwarted. No? After everything I've been through? How can you be so selfish? I'm your sister. Family is supposed to help each other. My mother started to cry, real tears of distress this time. Alara, how can you be so cold, so unforgiving? We raised you better than this. To turn your back on your own family? My father looked thunderstruck, then tried a different tack, his voice laced with wounded paternal authority, appealing to guilt. Your sister is suffering, Alara. Your mother is heartbroken. Don't you care at all about the pain you're causing? I care about my own well-being now, I stated, my voice still calm but infused with a finality that brooked no argument. A strength I hadn't known I possessed until this very moment. I will not be responsible for fixing the messes you created. I will not set myself on fire to keep you warm. Chloe, you need to find your own way, build your own life without my help, without Nyx's platform. Mom, Dad, I love you, but I cannot continue to be the family shock absorber or the invisible daughter whose needs are always secondary. I am building my own life now, on my own terms. The words, once terrifying to even think, felt liberating to speak, each one a stone removed from a heavy burden I'd carried for too long. The scent of the lemon polish I'd used on my small bookshelf seemed to assert itself, a fragrance of clean breaks and new, bright beginnings. They argued, pleaded, cajoled, and Chloe even tried to bargain, offering insincere promises of future good behavior, but my resolve was absolute, a wall of quiet strength they could not breach. Eventually, defeated and visibly shaken by this new, unyielding Alara, they left. Chloe shot me a look of pure, venomous resentment as she walked out, but it lacked its old power. It was the impotent fury of a dethroned tyrant. My parents just looked old and tired, their faces etched with a bewildered sorrow. The click of my apartment door closing behind them, the deadbolt sliding home, was one of the most satisfying sounds I'd ever heard. A profound sense of peace, vast and deep, settled over me, mixed with a lingering sadness for the family I wished I'd had, the support I'd never received, but also an immense, overwhelming relief. I was free. Later that evening, a simple email from Mr. Finch appeared in my inbox. It read, Elspeth always said the hardest word to learn, and often the most powerful, is no. She would be very proud today, Alara, as am I. I sat at my desk, the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds outside my window. Nix had a new video scheduled to premiere, a beautiful, hopeful piece about finding light in unexpected places, about the resilience of the creative spirit. But for the first time, Ilara's future felt even brighter, even more compelling than Nix's. I picked up a glossy travel brochure Meister Finch had tucked into a folder of documents from Nana Elspeth, a brochure detailing a remote, stunningly beautiful coastal region in Italy, famous for its art, its food, its light. A place for painting, for walking, for breathing. Was this where Ilara's next chapter would begin, far from the shadows of her past, under a new benevolent sun?